Hello, beautiful being. I wanted to share with you a couple of tips that I have for dealing with grief and honoring your grief, because it's not just about like putting up with it. Grief serves a purpose, and it's definitely, from a spiritual perspective, I see it as an opportunity to heal from a connection with a person that you no longer have in the physical realm, or to process the fact that you no longer have access to a person in the physical realm. And of course, if you are on a spiritual journey, if you are into the mystic arts, then you know that there are so many ways that we can connect with our loved ones, even if they are not with us in the physical. But there still is an immense amount of pain that we feel when we no longer are able to hug someone or hold their hand or spend time with them, just hearing their voice here in the physical realm, if that's something that we're used to doing. So I recently lost my mother here in the physical. I'm still connecting with her every single day in the spiritual realm. I'm so grateful for that. Ashe. But it is different, and it has taken some getting used to. It's taken me about a month and a half to begin to feel comfortable in my creative space, because for a while I really just wanted to curl up in bed, put on my big robe, grab my tissues, curl up in bed, and think about my mom. That's all I wanted to do. And so there are definitely stages to grief, and I think that for some of us, it's something that we feel for an extended period of time, but that feeling of grief morphs and it does change. I know for my father, it was very different. He crossed over about 12 years ago, but he left my childhood home when I was 9 years old. So I was sort of on a continual path of grief for him, because I grieved him every day since the day he left our home. With my mother, it was very different. She raised me. She was the one who was there. And so I was very, very close to her. And also physically, she was very nurturing. And so I loved getting her hugs and holding her hands and kissing each other on the cheek. It was very comforting to me. And so not having that, it was a huge transition. But there are 4 things that I have noticed that have really helped me over the past month and a half. So I wanted to share those things with you. The first thing is to allow yourself the amount of time that you need in order to process that initial round of grief. I think that is the hardest when they first are gone, because and I would say not just immediately, not just like the first day or two, but definitely those weeks and potentially months after they initially cross over. It can be very difficult to feel that pain, that shock of no longer having them. And so, if you have a 9 to 5, a lot of these workplaces, these offices, they will give you a certain amount of time, a certain number of days for bereavement. But in many cases, it's not enough. It's not what you need. And so if it does not cause you an undue amount of stress, or if you are able to, from a financial perspective, if you're able to take off a few extra days, or maybe an extra week or 2, or whatever you can allow yourself to take that you feel that you need, please do that, because it's really important to have that time to yourself where you're just quiet, or maybe you're talking to people, you're doing whatever it is that you need to do to nurture yourself at that time. But just understand that just because your job gives you a certain number of days to grieve whatever loss it is that you've experienced, that's not your rule. They don't create that rule for you. That's something that they have, and it doesn't work for everybody. It's just based on what they feel that they can afford to give you, or what they want to give you. So don't make that your rule. And if you are able to take extra time off and you feel that you need it, then please do that. Another thing is regarding cultural expectations. It is really silly and ridiculous what we are expected to do in some cultures once a loved one crosses over. For example, the repast that a lot of people have, where you're basically, after a funeral, you are basically hosting a social event. It's like you're providing either you're cleaning your home and opening your home up to people, or you're renting a space where you can have food and drinks for people to gather together. And it's a lot. It's a lot to expect of a person who has just lost a loved one, and you don't know what financial situation they may be in. And then you're saying, okay, well, where's the party? Okay, we went to the funeral. Where's the party? To me, it's absolutely insane. Now, if you enjoy it, if it brings you a sense of comfort, if you're very social, then it may bring you some comfort. You may enjoy doing that. And so if that's the case, then please do it and enjoy it. Absolutely. But just know that for a lot of people, it is quite a lot to expect from them to put on or to host a social event where you're providing food and providing drinks for people and a place to gather and congregate after they have lost their loved one. I think it's really actually insane to expect that from someone. And so if you don't enjoy that, if it doesn't feel good to you, then don't do it, and feel absolutely confident in your decision to not do it, because that's just a social expectation. And if it doesn't bring you pleasure, then it doesn't bring you healing, and you don't need it. Something else that I have really enjoyed doing is what I call active mindless tasks. Now, some people might refer to them as mindful tasks, because we often think of like doing things that you can kind of do on autopilot, where you need to be focused in a way, but it doesn't have to be like your 100% attention given to that task. Like, for example, driving. If you're an experienced driver, then a lot of times what you'll notice is that when you're sitting in traffic, or even when you're cruising on the highway, you're making a grocery list in your head. So I consider that sort of mindless, because it doesn't need your full attention. But you can make it a mindful activity by focusing on what you're doing at that moment. And it's mindful in that it can be an experience of rest and relaxation and focus. So for me, that activity that I love doing as I was grieving for my mom, and as I continue to grieve for her, is cleaning the house. I'm not having to use a lot of intuition to do it. So it's keeping me busy. I'm not allowing my body to rest to the point where I'm getting depressed. So I am busy, but also if I need to take a moment for myself and just cry, or I want to stop and look at pictures, or I want to stop and read some cards that my mom wrote for me, then I can do that, right? And it's not like I'm pressured to get this particular activity done in a certain amount of time. So for you, it may be cleaning, it may be organizing, it may be painting, it may be fixing something, working on something. Personally, I like when it's an activity that results in a product. I can sit there and say, oh, my closet's clean now, so it allows my mind the time that I need to rest, but also reflect. And it also keeps my body busy so that I am active enough to not get depressed. Exercise is also great for that. And of course, the result to that is where you are sending really good energy throughout your body so that you are avoiding that depression. And of course, depression can serve a purpose at times too. It sends a message as well, but it's really good if you can keep your vibe in a state where you don't have to sink that low. Finally, I suggest having patience with yourself. It is so important to just give yourself the time that you need, because you don't know how your journey is going to go. I knew that my mother was going to pass about a month to a month and a half prior to her crossing over. I knew that's what was approaching. And so I was kind of anxious about knowing what the journey was going to look like. I had always told myself that I'd probably go a little nuts when my mom crossed over, but it's okay to go nuts if you are also keeping yourself safe and you're not harming other people. It's okay to sort of quote unquote lose it if you need to, just allow yourself to sleep. If you need to go a couple of days where you're just crying and you're letting that emotion move through you. That's the most important thing, is to let it move through you and to not avoid it, to not push it away, and to understand that it doesn't matter what someone else's journey of grief looks like. Yours is what's important. What you need is what's important. Okay, so I hope that this was helpful to you, and I wish you peace, joy, many blessings, and I especially wish you peace at this time if you are experiencing grief. Take care.